Absolutely.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Um, Welcome to a special meeting of the Community Board 14 Community Environment, Cultural Affairs, and Economic Development Committee. Tonight, June 22nd, 2022, we are having a community conversation with representatives from the Prospect Park Alliance, Mr. Christian Zimmerman, who is the Vice President of Capital and Landscape Management with the Alliance. The conversation is regarding the Lakeshore project. And without further ado, actually, let me just take a moment and make sure I'm not missing any elected officials or representatives. And it doesn't look like I am. So Mr. Zimmerman, welcome, and you can take it away.
Great. I am happy to be here. I know I've not been a part of the discussions regarding our lake, our park, and all the water that comes to Kensington and, you know, your neighborhoods. But we have a project that I've been wanting to work on for a long time, and we're getting seed money and finally moving forward. I'm going to try, I'm really bad at technology, so I'm going to try this. But I want to start by showing you what I know and how water moves throughout the park. Just to give you a little background, I'm a landscape architect by profession, education training. I have a horticulture degree as well, but I've been here for 32 years. So I've been here since 1990 and doing all the restoration work. And this has been a vexing problem for the park and clearly the neighborhoods that I've been wanting to work on. And finally, we're getting interest. So let me see if I can share a thing. Share screen. And what I want to do is share that. Do you see that? You don't see that, right?
No, we don't see anything yet.
You don't see it. I figured you wouldn't see that. So let me see if it's still going. Oh, it says connecting. What I want to, what the,
While you're waiting for your screen to share, I just want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Lauren Collins of the Church Avenue bid and Flatbush Avenue bid. Thank you so much, Lauren, for joining us tonight.
yeah, I apologize for my incompetence in this stuff. Okay, I am not going to figure out how to do this. So I'm going to explain. I think I can do this well. So often, as you all know, just the background behind this, every time we have a heavy, heavy rain, water spills out of the park and goes toward your neighborhoods. And causes problems, obviously. Often it's been called often I've heard, and I've never been in the meetings, but what people have been blaming, the problem is our lake, because when the lake floods and then goes over land, that spills over. So it's always been the lake. And that does happen. We try and control it, and we've controlled it really, really well. The last time we didn't control it well was when we had Hurricane, what was it, Henri, and I can't remember the second one. The back-to-back, where we got 16, 18 inches of rain in here. And then then the banks of the lake flooded, went over land. And as you know, because you all live in the neighborhood, when it goes over land, what it winds up doing is it goes on through the drive, goes down Park, leaves the park at Park Circle, goes down Caton Avenue, goes down Coney Island Avenue, and causes, not uniquely, but collectively, that and other things really floods and causes problems. what happens more often, and I've videotaped it. I've been watching this for a long time, and I do have videotape of my phones. I've been filming this. Is the problem we have that impacts your neighborhoods is not the lake, because we try and control that. And yes, in the worst situation, we're going to work on solving that as well. Like, we don't ever want the lake to leave its banks. But what happens is Parkside Avenue, Prospect Park Southwest, East Lake Drive, South Lake Drive, all they all go to that single point of Park Circle, you know. So from my jurisdiction, what I'm dealing with is I have East Lake Drive and South Lake Drive, that wall of water that collects there and pushes out into the street, and the path system. So what happens when we looked at that, or when I looked at it, I realized there are very few catch basins that control that water. We've had climate change. We're getting more and more water, and it just goes over land. And when you have a 40 to 60 foot wide of impervious pavement flowing, it's got to go somewhere. And so if you think of the peristyle, or some people call it the Grecian shelter, so if you think that roadway in the park from the Grecian shelter to Park Circle, that wall of water has to go somewhere, and it goes to you. If you go to the 16th Street entrance on Prospect Park Southwest, not on, inside the park, from a little bit in, Lookout Hill, in that area, down from that point all the way down to Park Circle, that goes to you. So both sides of the road, it's a crowned road, but all that water goes there because we don't have the capacity to take care of it anymore. The catch basins are filled, or they've been cleaned, but the pipes aren't working functionally, or there just aren't enough of them now. So that's really where a lot of the problem is. It's not the lake. The lake is kind of like the 10% on top of, and that just makes it really bad, because when the lake breaks the banks, it's a couple days of just a constant flow of water. We want to stop that. So why I'm here, and I'm here because with Sean, we've been working together. It's like, why don't we solve this problem instead of finger pointing? It's Parks Department, it's DEP, it's somebody's fault. It's like, we need to fix this. One, I don't want it to impact the neighborhoods, but it also hurts the park, because when the water goes over land, it causes erosion, it causes scouring. It's no longer useful in that sense, and it destroys our landscape too. So it's not. I won't say that I'm altruistic and in the sense of we want to help you, but it hurts us as well, hurts the park as well, and the user experience. Because if you come into the park and it's all scoured and it's destroyed because we had a flood, we want to solve that problem as well. We've been asking for money. The time was right. Shahana Hanif is very interested in this project. She actually spearheaded from the funding point of view, and we pitched it. We said, look, we want to do flood mitigation. We want to fix our lake issue. We want to fix the water issue on this portion of the park, which is about a third probably a quarter of the park that we're impacting here. And this is a project that would reconstruct the shoreline, but it not only would reconstruct the shoreline, but it would capture half of the roads in the park along Southwest and Parkside Avenue on the inside of the park. So the road's crowned, as you know, so the water goes on one side and goes on the other side. We wound up, so the $20 million project that we talked about, or when we pitched it to the council members, the mayor, anybody who would listen, was this $20 million restoration. It's a flood mitigation project. It's an ADA accessibility project. It's an environmental project when it talks about ecological restoration, habitat as well. And it's an aesthetic project in the sense of creating beautiful views and seating areas, places where people can enjoy. And we received $3 million. Now we asked for 20. We didn't expect we'd get 20 first. That's a lot of money up front. But we wound up getting $3 million. And what that does for us is actually it's seed money that kickstarts this project that can draw attention to what we're trying to do. And we will be able to have a master plan that will talk about restoring the shoreline to the drive from essentially the summer house. You know that rustic structure by Parkside or by the Lakeside Center? There's this log kind of structure. From there all the way around to Wellhouse Drive, eliminating Wellhouse Drive and making a path system, but creating more landscape. But it's doing that whole thing from the drive to the drive. And we think we have enough money to be able to do this master plan to show the vision of what this will be. And we don't have the amount exactly, but let's just say $2.5 million toward the first capital project. We've done this in the past. We've been successful. So what that then helps us get attention and get continued support. As an example of how we were recently successful in this is at the Long Meadow ball fields. We have 7 ball fields in Prospect Park. And Brad Lander, way back, wanted to reconstruct all of them. They hadn't been touched since the 80s. So they needed to be taken care of and redone. He didn't, as a council member, he doesn't have that kind of money every single year. He needed to phase it. So what we did is he gave us enough money to design Field 1 and do a master plan that showed us reconstructing all 7 fields and a phasing plan that showed how we would do that through time. And we got that approved through the Landmarks Commission, which we have to go through for approvals. I mean, the community as well, and then the Public Design Commission. And we just said, as we get money, we go back to them and saying, okay, we're now going to do phase 2, we're now going to do phase 3, and so on and so forth. We're now at the final phase. So we're doing fields 2 and 3, which are the last fields to be reconstructed. So through that momentum of Brad giving us the initial money, we were able to build, and we received mayoral money, council money, not just his money, but other council members actually gave him a little bit, and then Brooklyn delegation. We expect that to happen here as well because it's such a significant project. And I apologize if I'm bouncing around, but this is a very exciting project for me because it's going to transform this area, and it's really interesting. One of the important pieces besides flood mitigation is accessibility. Everyone looks at this area and thinks it's flat, which it is, relatively flat. So from an ADA point of view or accessibility point of view, you would think it's completely accessible. It is almost completely inaccessible because all of the paths, if you walk that area and look at it, and if you're on crutches, if you're in a wheelchair, if you're in a walker or whatever, those paths are in horrible shape. They're just not accessible. And if you're an elderly person walking, it's treacherous. It's really just kind of horrible. So here we're doing flood mitigation, we're doing ecological restoration work, and we can do accessibility and make this open to all people, which is really important, and it's not. I'd be happy to give people tours and just point all of this out. You know, we can walk it and people will see. Just this is really unfortunate, and it's significant because it's along the water, and people love getting to the water, looking at the wildlife. So one of the things I think that you're interested in, and anytime you have questions, I'd be happy to answer this. We're right at the very beginning, but we are going to start. The funding lands in July. We'll start working on this master plan this year for sure to be able to get this thing going. But one of the things that we're looking at is our focus is if you think of from the peristyle to Park Circle, that area, and you look at the crown of the road, there are only, I think, 3 catch basins, and they're lower than the lake. I mean, if you look, you just looked at the water level, so they can't go. So they generally go into what's called a seepage basin, a leaching basin that eventually drains. What we want to do is, what I want to do is create, I want to divert that water, take it into a containment area and control that, just get it off the road and collect it, and then be able to put it back into the lake at some point, but not have it go overland, not have it go down Parkside or Park Circle, but remove it. So we'd at least have half the road where we collect that water, which would reduce it by quite a bit. I mean, that's a lot. That's a significant volume of water when you see these heavy rains. We have a bridle path, which if you looked at it, you wouldn't see that there's a bridle path. Maybe we can put in these containment tanks underneath there and have the water move into that, but get it into the landscape and get it off the road. So that's what we're planning on doing on both paths, both roads, south on the west, on the Parkside side and the south side drive, that we would just make sure that all that water on the road gets to the lake eventually. May not immediately, but it just gets it off of the impervious pavement and does not go into Park Circle. Our idea is we really want that water, because the other thing about this that's important is we use city water to feed the lake. This would help us reduce the use of city water to feed that lake, because if we take all the stormwater and collect it, then we can move it back in at some point. You know, we'll need to hire an engineering company firm that will understand that and be able to do that. But that's been done before. We're not doing necessarily anything new. What's innovative is that we're doing it in a historic park. I've been working with Sean on this. We want to solve this problem, and she's been great in doing this, because we're not finger pointing. We're not, it's the Parks Department. DEP actually isn't interested in this as well. They're going to they're looking at Parkside Avenue, which I don't have jurisdiction over. I don't have any control over, which I don't know if you know this, but from Parade Place to Park Circle on Parkside Avenue, there are no catch basins. There is no place for that water to go except to Coney Island Avenue. That's a lot of water. I have videotape. I can't remember if I gave Sean the films, because I filmed storm events, and there's 1 to 2 feet of water. There's a wall of water going down Parkside Avenue. You can see it because you have it next to the cars. It can't go anywhere, so it goes to Coney Island Avenue, which is not great. So they're looking at diverting. They're studying that. I'm sure it's not official. They're still trying to figure out how to do this, so it's not official. But they'd like to be able to divert that water as well. Maybe they can put it in. We have all these artificial turf fields in the parade ground. Well, those artificial turf fields have beds of 12 inches, 6 to 12 inches 18 inches of broken stone. They're leaching fields. They're just perfect containment areas of broken stone where we can collect the water. Anyway, I'll shut up.
I think two people have questions. First Elizabeth, and then Glenn.
Okay. Yep. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hi. So I live on East 10th Street, and many of my neighbors have been experiencing this flooding. It also comes down our street. It's one street over from Coney Island Avenue. And I had a couple questions because I've been observing, this water off as well, both just generally how Parks perceives the problem to be, and also what kind of prioritization is going to happen. So I guess first, does Parks understand that the water coming off of these drives, as you've mentioned, it's not just in severe thunderstorms. This happens in any flash flooding of any small amount. It's a very pervasive problem that both, floods, I do see the flooding down Coney Island Avenue. I see it off the loop into the Park Circle, as you've mentioned, and watch it come down there. It also comes down East 10th Street. It backs up the sewers into my neighbor's basements, which has been apparently going on for decades. It's a very big problem, and I just wanted to make sure that Parks knows that this isn't just in I know you'd mentioned the lake flooding was only in really historic storms, which
Right.
that does track with my biking around and walking around the park in the rain. But just wanted to check that the basic flooding problem is very common.
No. So I'm here as the Prospect Park Alliance. I'm not the Parks Department, so I can't speak for them. But from our perspective, so what I was talking about, the lake is often blamed for all of these headaches. And so what I was trying to point out was it's not. It's only in severe events. If we didn't catch it right, if we aren't able to drop the lake properly. Yeah, I know, absolutely. Anytime a rain event. I mean, except for the one right now, we're not getting. But
Yeah,
if
this
it's
is pretty mild.
you get a run-inch rainfall. If you think about it, Parkside Avenue, solid pavement, no place for the water to go. Prospect Park, Parkside Drive, that drive, no place for the water to go. Prospect Park Southwest, no place for the water to go. The South Drive, no place for the water to go. A 1-inch rainfall, which is not uncommon these days. That all goes there. What I'm just trying to do is differentiate. What I want people to quit. I've had enough people blame the lake for all these ills, and it's not. We really control it we really do a good job. The back-to-back hurricanes caused we just couldn't drain the lake. We have a 12-inch outflow pipe that we use to drain the lake before storm events. But when you get 16 to 18 inches of rain in a 2-week period, all of the park drains to the lake. It all collects. So that's all I'm saying is absolutely. Anytime you have a significant rainfall, we impact you.
Yeah, cool.
So, that's why. No, I'm.
No, it's great to hear that because
I'm not pointing a finger. I know it. I watched it. I watched this. I'm all about drainage because poor drainage impacts just everyone when it floods. And I realize we're an artificial system, in the sense that the lake, but it needs to function well, but our roadways aren't functioning well in collecting water. So yes, I think a 1-inch rainfall, it all flows to you, or maybe not used to, but it goes that way. It goes down. I use Coney Island Avenue because it's it's one. It goes everywhere, but that's the idea. That's why if I can at least take care of half of the road on that's 30. I mean, we could do the volumes, and we'll probably have this conversation down the road. I can say that we're going to be capturing, a half a mile of pavement, which is so many thousand, square feet, and in a 1-inch rainfall, it's this much water, and I think I hope I'm there in next year that we can say this is what we're solving, and then DEP which I've met with DEP. We all got together finally. The city, I have to say, Eric Adams is community relations person, and Sean can talk about this. We all met on the street. It's like, look, let's quit pointing fingers. Let's solve this. And it just what's getting solved. It's bigger than Prospect Park. So, but if I can solve what if I can reduce the external impacts to the neighborhood from us, then it's like, okay, I've done my part. And, we're talking about creating seasonal wetlands. So you know how in some areas when outside the city, but if there's a flood zone, so let's just say right now, when we get a flood getting into a hurricane and we get a lot of water and the water goes over land, it just creates a river. But what if we shape the landscape that it can take a 1 to 2 inch additional rain, in a depth, which spreads out over the park and then slowly recedes? Can we do that? How can we create this wall, this barrier and I use the bridle path because I think that's a perfect example of where we can actually use as a firewall, if you will, a water wall, that the water will not go beyond the bridle path. It doesn't exist. The bridle path's all kind of eroded and you don't even see it. But if you look at it, the bones are there. If we dig it up and put this as a containment area so that the water will then stop at that point, and it fills up storage tanks, lack of a better word. And then once we do that, we can put that after the lake recedes, then we can put that water back into the lake and thereby turning the flow down in our water system. So we're looking at that. But yes, I'm sure this is recorded, whatever. I am telling you, a 1 inch rainfall impacts you because it's the roads, though. It's not the lake. A 1 inch rainfall in the park is just absorbed. Lakes.
Glenn, you're next, and then Sean.
I actually had another question still.
Okay,
To
go ahead.
follow up on that. So it also just, you mentioned that this was supposedly a $20 million project, and it has a lot of different components to it, and that you've received $3 million. How does Prospect Park want to prioritize getting flood mitigation, the accessibility, restoring the habitat, adding views and seating areas? Because, obviously my neighbors are very concerned about the flood runoff, but also, even within the park, you can see flooding around the street, from around the Lake Drive, and so forth, like really impacting a lot of the paths there as well. So, like, is there a prioritization that will be happening? How will, if there's only partial funding, what will get prioritized?
So we actually still haven't gotten the money. It's still June, so eventually. So we haven't talked. We haven't prioritized. That's a process. I was just happy to get. I was hoping for 5 million. I'm greedy, but I'll take 3. We haven't talked about that. We haven't thought about that yet. So we will have to go through kind of the design process. I can tell you that from me personally and from my boss, the acting president, the interim president, James Snow, who's and we're still looking for a new president. We'll get one. But from our point of view, we want a very visible, big win, because we want that to. We don't want people to say, "Oh, we gave you $3 million and that's enough, and we're going to go away." We want to show. So the first project will be something that will, I think, or I'll fight for, that will show visible improvement to the park and the quality of life of the people who use it. I don't think my gut feeling is we're probably not going to touch the water, the lake, because that is really important. But $3 million or $2.5 million construction isn't going to do much. diverting water and reconstructing paths for ADA would. So if we, you know, so if we wind up attacking Parks, the Parkside Avenue drive, that drive, and diverting that water and the paths, that could be a really good project because that way we could meet ADA access, remove water from the neighborhood, possibly do some habitat stuff. So we can do it all in a small amount that's cost effective. Lakeshore restoration is really expensive. Phragmites removal, we get DEC involved, the state. You're removing Phragmites, you're doing shoreline stabilization. That's expensive. And 2.5 million, frankly, won't cut it. Doing path work, diverting catch basins, getting drainage to, you know, do that, that's more effective. So, but we don't have, we just, you know, we're told we're going to get the money. So, but we haven't phased that yet. And the reason also, let's just say they gave us all $20 million, we would still phase the project because we couldn't take that much parkland away from the public and put it behind a fence and construct it. It's not feasible. It's not fair. It's just not feasible. It's too much land. I mean, at some point I'll send Sean. Well, actually you saw there was a write-in campaign that showed the area. I mean, we had 2,000 people.
Yeah, the link is actually in the chat right now, Christian.
Okay. Yeah. So that, I mean, you see the size. If we put that all under the fence in one fence, I'd be strung up. I mean, people would hate me for taking that much land away from the public use. So we just couldn't, we wouldn't do that. Anyway, Lakeside, the skating area, that was 4 phases. I don't think people remember that, but that was 4 phases. Any other questions?
Glenn, you're next.
Thank you, Donald, and thank you for that presentation, but you answered the question. I was curious as to what phase 1 might look like, so thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking the first phase would be trying to divert water. Because we don't have to divert the water on the drive, we don't have to dig up the drive. We just have to connect to those catch basins, maybe add catch basins, and then move it somewhere. You know, we need to move it off the road and into the landscape. And the challenging part will be, how do we do that efficiently, and to what storm event that we design it for? I think, you know, everyone designs things for like a 10-year storm. I don't know if we should be doing that anymore. Maybe we're doing like a 50-year storm, or, you know, I don't, yeah. So I think that's my inclination. Now it could change because I'm not the one that gets to decide everything. I'd like to be able to decide everything, but I don't get to. But that's my feeling, is we do something like that because it's high profile. We meet accessibility. We reduce the impact in the neighborhood. We don't solve it, but we actually show that we're reducing water distribution, you know, water impacting neighborhoods. And we could, you know, when I get an engineer on board, we'd be able to quantify how much water we're taking away from, you know, we're stopping from getting to Coney Island Avenue or Park Circle.
Sean, you're up.
Thanks. I actually heard Liz's question a little bit differently. Rather than prioritizing within the project as you see in its entirety, it sounded to me almost like a question about how is Parks and the Alliance going to keep your respective eyes on the ball to see this particular project through to fruition. And not to speak for you, but I have a strong sense that there is a lot of energy behind this plan and a lot of momentum going in the right direction. And I kind of wanted to point out too that this isn't happening in a vacuum, that the enthusiasm from DEP, which, you know, is an agency that was worried about having to have too heavy of a lift in an asset that isn't, you know, that isn't recognized as their own now sees a partnership and some impetus that they can support. I think and I think, Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought you told me once the reason why Parkside doesn't have catch basins is because it was originally an interior parks road.
It's parkland.
Yeah,
Look at, and it was actually called Franklin Avenue early, if you remember, if those history buffs. Yeah, it was parkland. It's not, it was not mapped as, it was
A
connected
street.
because it was
Yeah.
built the same time Prospect Park was. It was adjacent. It was part and parcel. So there was that.
So and DEP doesn't install catch basins unless there's a capital project to piggyback on. So there's reason to be hopeful that that this is the project that will facilitate that piggyback ride. And then I think DOT might also have a role to play too, to bring in. And then the other collaboration that's supporting this is the collaboration of the council members. And Shahana Hanif was mentioned, and I think she spearheaded, is bringing a lot of energy to it. But it's supported by Rita Joseph as well, and there's another council member.
Crystal Hudson.
Thank you. Yeah. Then on top of that is this other layer, which is that all of the other capital projects in the vicinity, all, if I understand correctly, Christian, correct me if I don't say it right, but all of those other projects have a water capture or, a water infrastructure component. So the pathway through parade grounds and the ball fields in the parade grounds, the new installation of the game space all has a water runoff component to it. So nothing else is being built in the park that doesn't have that in mind.
No, you're right. Well, in the parade ground, so I worked on that from the mid 90s on, when we worked with DEP. None of, except for where the field house is, when we worked with DEP, all of that water has to stay on the parade ground. None of that goes on to Caton Avenue or ties in anywhere. We were required. So there's about 24 leaching basins, big leaching basins, so self-containing. So because they didn't want, one, it's combined sewer, and they didn't want to impact it, but they didn't want to impact the neighborhood. So yeah, we are absolutely doing that. Every project that we do, we want the water to stay in the park.
And then I have just a quick question, and then I'll go back to mute. But is there more impervious pavement on these borders of the park? And I don't know even how to ask this to say since this time or that time, but has there been an increase in laying down impervious pavement? And then one last thing, if you could talk a little bit about how you drain the lake, because it's not a big gush, it's over days, so it's more of a trickle. I just think it would be useful for people to hear that too. Thanks.
So there's all the paths in this portion of the park are original to the original design. So the 1865 plan to the paths. The problem that we have is that, so I've been here 32 years and none of the catch basins have been cleaned in those 32 years on the park paths. So if you look at them, they're really in horrible. So they can't go, the water just goes over land. And if it goes over land, it's eventually going to get to, in that area, some of it will go into the landscape, but a lot of it in heavy rains goes over land onto the park drives or Parkside Avenue and out to the street. We need to, we'd like to fix that. We just don't have, it's a big park. We've been doing a lot of it, and as we proceed, we remove that we mitigate that problem. But we're not doing that. We're hoping that DEP actually is interested, and they not committed because they didn't quite know what to do, but we're doing half of the road in the park because I can in this project. I'm not doing the other half, but they're interested in seeing if they can help us. So, it really, we're finally, I don't know what what happened, the planets aligned, you know, Kumbaya. I'd like to take credit for it completely, that it was Sean and me that got together and we said, let's just play with this. Let's just make this happen. And it happened. But, you know, something happened, but DEP all of a sudden got on board. Parks Department got on board.
And elected officials.
And elected officials. Well, getting Shahana really excited about it. I mean, she was once we got her excited about it, and then she got Rita Joseph and Crystal Hudson. There wasn't a lot of arm twisting. It was really, this makes sense. This is helping it's a big area. I mean, we're talking a major impact. It's going to take time. It's probably going to take 5 years to do all of it, but maybe a couple more construction wise. But you know, everybody, there wasn't any DEP instantly got interested when they found out we were serious about what we were doing. They're like, they weren't isolated. They weren't an island and saying, oh, we have to do it all ourselves. And once they saw that they had partners, everyone got, you know, it's a great project. It's really an interesting project. And just from design, but environmentally and community public, it's like the ravine restoration for me. It's that whole redoing the waterfalls, that water course, and I mean, it's such an impactful project. I can't think of anything negative about it. Recreating islands, you know, it's got all the bells and whistles. It's got all these things that we're checking off. We're doing, you know, there isn't a constituent. There isn't I mean, birds love it. Everybody loves it. It's just like, there's nothing, we're not doing anything, you know, we're doing historic preservation, but we're doing it in an ecological restoration area. And, you know, I can't think anything negative about it, except that it's a big area and it's going to take time. But I think we can solve this problem. And the Alliance is committed. This is our next big. So, you know, when we talk about, we did the ravine, if you want to, I understand, you know, people are like, well, what's your commitment? We did the ravine in the 90s. Then we did the low water around the boathouse, that section in the early 2000s. And then we waited, we need to raise money. Then we did Lakeshore, Lakeside, that's 26 acres. Now we're up in the Northeast, on the east side in Flatbush, that's 27 acres. And all of a sudden we're already pivoting and this is our next big. So we're still working on the Northeast, but this is our focus because climate change is important to us, and how we can do that. So we're committed to it. I'm committed to it. Yeah, I'm its biggest cheerleader. So.
Thanks for that, Christian. Actually, want to this question may have already been answered in partially, but Corazon Valiente had a question in the chat. Would converting some of the tree beds to rain gardens along the way with the cutouts help with the water going out to the circle?
I think so. Rain gardens are one solution. So we haven't, you know, clearly we haven't designed this, but they'll be probably part of the solution. You know, diverting the water into the soft landscape is important. So how they look, what we do, but rain gardens definitely will be discussed and incorporated if they can. The biggest issue that we have, issue is not the right word. The biggest challenge is the amount of water, and can we create rain gardens large enough to accommodate these big storm events and not take that away from the public? Because you got to remember, people, you know, there isn't a lot of land over there for people to picnic, to sit, to recreate, you know. So if we create a rain garden, that's not necessarily a place that people then can hang out and enjoy, because it's just not, it's a different kind of thing. So we have to balance that part. That's why I'm saying is if we contain it below grade, if we move it to some other place. But there definitely will be rain gardens as part of this.
Thank you for that. And just quickly, and just to recap, I guess. So you said you guys you wanted 20 million. We're hoping for 5, but got 3.
Swing for the fences.
Pardon?
Swing for the fences.
What can community members do to assist in helping to, amplify this even more? And also, what
I think
how do we help as a community board?
I think stay active. I think thank Shahana and Rita. You see them, thank them for their support on this. Thank Mayor Adams. He gave us $1 million. We didn't expect that. The folk, we wanted, we're looking. So what we're looking at doing for the future is, so what we did at Lakeshore, when we built a new skating facility in that whole area, one of the things that the council brokered with Bloomberg, the former mayor, was you give 2.5 million, we'll give 2.5 million. So it was like, we're all in together, but we're going to partner in that. And that's what they did. So they gave 2.5 for 4 years. Each one gave, it's like, you give 2.5, we'll give 2.5. And that's how we're looking at this. It's like, if we can get that kind of thing, which is actually a reasonable amount, and probably from a phasing point of view, it's good. I mean, if we got all 20 million at once, that'd be great. But 5 million a year, that's great. So 2.5, 2 million, just the partnering. So thanking them all and saying, this is great. We hope, thank you for the 1 million and the 2 million. We need more. And, we just want you to continue that commitment. And I think once we do the master plan, that will help. But it's just that continued support, and be diligent. I mean, you've been beaten up for a long time. Let's just be diligent though and get that kind of thing. And I think that's why creating that first project as this gets everyone excited. But Shahana's already on board. She's all in. It's just then she needs to sway the Brooklyn delegation to do that, because she doesn't have that kind of money, to every year. Her capital allocation, as the council members only have, they own so much, but the Brooklyn delegation and the council president, they, she can fund it. She can add additional. So cheerleading, I know we'll be doing it.
And just to remind everybody, our bigger capital projects do get funded in phases, from our road bridges to transit station house projects, to the big stuff. The funding never came in one fell swoop. So it's not out of the ordinary to get your starter, your nest egg, and then hatch something and then get more.
Yeah, it's rare that we get that kind of money. 5 million is a great thing. 2 million is not bad. I mean,
with this initial funding, once you get it, what do you anticipate the timeline will be from start to completion? Would it be a year, 2 years?
We haven't even talked about that because we're not even into July yet. But I mean, under the normal system, it would be a year for design, obviously a year for procurement, a year for construction. So, you're talking, so 23.
2025, 2026.
Yeah, 20 construction in 25. Calendar year. I'm taking calendar year now. I know we did fiscal and calendar, but probably in 2025. The unknown for me is because we're doing a master plan, we'd like to design the entire thing because we want to be able to show the vision of the entire thing, which helps for fundraising. It may be another 6 months. Just the approval process. There'll be a lot of eyes on this, and it has state. The other thing that we're actually doing is because we're doing, if we do it, just to give you, I'm sorry, as I tend to bounce around when I'm talking. I apologize. We're going after state grants to do this as well. We're not there yet because we don't have the data. A number of the environmental grants that we apply to generally want us to have some engineering data, metrics, what is it that how much water are we diverting? What are we doing? Those kind of things to get the grants. And we looked at a grant that was due in July and we pulled back because we don't have that backup. But next year we'll have the backup. So we'll go for a grant, and those are matching. And those can be millions of dollars. The one that we go into, I realize they could change, but the one that we've looked at in the past has been up to $5 million, which would be great. And the city would love that. If we did a matching grant, even for $2 million, the city would love that. Here we're having the state with the council and the mayor, it all feeds everyone. It's a win-win.
Thanks for that. Mehdi has a question. You're still muted, Mehdi.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity and for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure you know about it, but just wanted to make sure it is out there. So city has a 6-inch land cover data that gives you the basically impervious surface and permeable surfaces. So for the park, it is relatively easy to calculate how much impervious surface you have. Also, city has LiDAR-driven DEM file, which again, that's pretty accurate for the catchments for designing that, and I think that's very probably useful. So those data are available, and there is a flyover in 2022, this year, and we are hoping to get actually our hands on the new LiDAR data. I can, once I get it, because I've worked with city on some of the projects, once I get that, I might be able to share, or the DEM, which is really crucial for your work.
That would be great. We're open to anything. We're just, we haven't even started. So just collecting and find out, where do we get this information? Who do we hire? So absolutely. That would be great.
All right. Well, does anyone have any other questions or comments? I don't see any hands raised. Lauren, I'm not sure if you have any updates from the bids or any announcements of, brief announcements that you might want to give now before the summer starts while you're here.
Thank you, Dwayne. No, this has really been fascinating, and especially as Christian, as we get the brunt of it after. I know it goes down East 10th Street, and then a lot of it ends up on Church Avenue. Our bid goes from Coney Island Avenue to Flatbush. So This has really been helpful. And I'm so glad the DEP is happy about this and is looking forward to partnerships. So any support that we can give, Sean has our contact info. And
that's
looking
great.
forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I'll be talking to you. I will be doing this more, I'm sure, once we get going. And as we kind of move forward, but it's a very exciting project that's been long overdue.
And it looks
If
like
you ever have questions, I leave now, and all of a sudden you said, shoot, just send it to Sean. She knows where I work. She knows where I am. And I'm in the picnic house. I'm in the picnic house, lower level. So.
I saw a question dropped in the chat, and I also see a hand raised from Florencia. So I'll read the quick question, and then Florencia, you can ask your question. And just to be mindful of the time, there's a question from, and please forgive me if I don't get your name, the pronunciation of your name correctly here. Samyukta Mahendra has a question. I know you mentioned that something that was going to make an impact needed to be done. Is there the possibility to do a community needs assessment before determining what gets prioritized?
Needs assessment. Well, so when we go through, trying to think of how to, so when we start the process, we'll do a scope of work, and that will define broadly the things that need to be done. I think, that we're looking at here. Most of what I've been saying right now is, frankly, it's my vision. It's what I've been thinking about and how to do this. And, now we got the money, so now we can actually really look at it, or we'll get the money and we'll really look at, it's like, where are our problems areas? I did the broad brush, and now we'll get into defined assessment of where the areas of real impact are, and areas that are less important in the sense of as an impact. They need to be done, but they're really just shoreline restoration, something like that. And then that will probably, tell us from a point of view what we need to do first.
Christian, can I jump in on this answer too?
Yeah,
I do feel like the severity and the length of time that the flooding has been occurring south of the park is kind of a community needs assessment. That mitigating the flood is requires a punctuation mark. And then I'd also encourage the community board also ask for input from community members on budget requests and stuff like that. So there are a lot of opportunities to weigh in. And Christian, I suspect you'd be willing to come back, and co-chairs, I suspect you would want to have Christian come back as the plan unfolds, and there can be community response in the early phases as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you heard my first, when someone asked me what, for that initial money, what we spend on, I talked about flood mitigation and reducing the water. I didn't talk about Lakeshore restoration. I was at this, but that's my, gut. But I think, and that's reducing the water, the impact into the neighborhood, and having an impact in the park. But so that's not a needs assessment. That's a visual assessment from my point of view, and having followed this. But I think we still need to do the official, say what's the most important thing. But I think that will help us get more money. Boom, we just reduce, I don't know, 5,000 gallons a minute into the neighborhood. Great, fund more, as opposed to, well, we created this nice shoreline and the egrets are happy. That's important, but that's not where I'm going to try and get my money. That's all nice. That's all really important and good, but
How about one last person? I think she hasn't turned her sound on though. Her mic on. Ms. Chang, you have to turn. Okay, you're okay now.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, Sean basically addressed what I was going to say to the board. It could be part of the the needs statement, in order to get some more money. This is a great project, and that homes won't be flooded anymore, and the sidewalks.
I'm not gonna go that far. I won't.
Okay.
I'm,
Well, it will help at any rate.
Will
and
help.
I just wanted to ask, will that eliminate the soggy, swampy paths that are in the park during, when it rains?
Yes, in
They're
that area, that's the idea. they wouldn't be underwater. They would, yes,
Yeah, because it's
absolutely.
when it rains, it gets very, yeah.
It's a
Okay.
swamp over there.
It is in many areas. I do walk the park.
Yeah.
So I look forward to that. And thanks, Sean. As usual, you're on the ball.
Great.
If there are no other questions, last chance, we'll call it an evening. Any more questions from anybody? Well, Mr. Zimmerman, thank you for your presentation. It was great. And
Yeah.
if you have any printed material that you can send the board electronically, we'd love to see that way also.
Yeah, I'll send some things to Sean, and then I don't know if they'll be.
We'll post it.
Yeah, I can just show you some of the things that I've been looking at through time, or some videos showing to just, yeah, I can send some movies of rain and just saying, see, I get it. We get it. It's not, you're not screaming into the wind. You've been heard. You've definitely been heard.
And hopefully you can get back sometime in the winter and give us an update.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay.
It was very good.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Christian. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Sean.
Motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
Motion. Okay.
All right.
Good night,
night.
everyone.
Good night,
Good night.
folks.
Okay.
Good night and thank you again.
Good night, everyone.